Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 487. TowerGate 487, July the 10th, 2018, Tuesday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Big news today, so let's get right to it. There is a witness who is prepared to identify two killers of Seth Rich. That's right, let me say that again. There is a witness who is prepared to identify two killers of Seth Rich. Now, before we all start jumping up and down with joy and glee, let's go ahead and dig into this just a little bit. What's going on? Okay, well, the person who's behind this is, of course, Jack Burkman. Those of you who know me know pretty well that I'm not a big fan of Jack Burkman. I know he's an attorney and a radio talk show host. He's a lobbyist. He's an inside the Beltway, part of the Uniparty. He's a deep stater for the most part. I don't trust Jack as far as I can throw him. And I don't know if this is a publicity stunt or if it's for real. It's hard to know with Jack Burkman. It could very well be true, but it could also be a publicity stunt, which would be really sad on the second anniversary of Seth Rich's murder to use that as a publicity stunt to, build your radio audience or whatever. I don't know if that's exactly what's going on here, but let's get into the details just a bit, and I'll tell you why I think this. So, Jack Burkman is claiming that he has a solid witness that will identify the two killers, one of which he says is a current DEA agent, and the other is a current ATF agent. These are the two guys that his star witness says killed Seth Rich. And I guess he believes he can prove it. Burkman says that the witness will have armed guards and will be disguised when he comes out and makes this public, which he is going to do this coming weekend at a function in Washington, D.C. at a Holiday Inn at 1 o'clock p.m. And then they're going to have a ceremony, and then they're going to walk down to the place where Seth Rich was murdered. And apparently this individual is going to be having some armed protection. He's going to be dressed in a disguise, and he's going to step up to the microphone and tell you his story about who the killers are, and I guess how he knows who the killers are, and he's going to identify them. He can identify them apparently by name. Burkman says that this witness, this star witness, was discovered by Frank Whalen, who is a retired NYPD detective, and another one of these guys who was trying to work on the Seth Rich case, who's a retired detective, and we've all probably heard from Mr. Whalen before. And he seems like a reasonably good guy. Maybe he's solved the case. I guess we're going to find out pretty soon. So this will commence at 1 o'clock p.m. on Sunday at this Holiday Inn in D.C. or Virginia 1. Probably D.C., yeah, I'm sure it's D.C., because they're going to walk from there down to the Seth Rich site in a candle ceremony or what have you. Okay, so here's my first thoughts on this. Number one is Jack Burkman, okay, who will pull a publicity stunt like this with no problem. So I would not be surprised to see what happens here. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm just thinking along the Jack Burkman line. I would not be surprised to see this guy step up to the microphone and say, yeah, I can identify the two guys who killed Seth Rich. And I'll tell you one thing else, too. They were hired by the Russians. They were hired by the Russians to kill Seth Rich. The Russians are behind it. The Russians hired these two guys to kill Seth Rich. That is maybe one thing he might say. I don't know what he's going to do. I'm just speculating, but I know at some point it was Jack Burkman who was suggesting that the people who killed Seth Rich were working for the Russians. So who knows what'll happen when it's a Jack Burkman event? Who knows what'll happen? I really hope it's true. I really hope this police detective has found the person who can identify the killers, and he steps up to the microphone and does so. Of course, no one out in the audience, as far as I know, can go arrest the two killers. Now, this is where I have another issue with this. Right off the top of my head, Jack Burkman is a licensed attorney in the state of Virginia, and also, I believe, in D.C., District of Columbia. Now, he's a lawyer. Now, a retired police chief comes to him and says, "Yeah, Jack, I've found the guy who can finger the 2 guys who killed Seth Rich." At that point, you would think, as an attorney and as someone, who has some common sense, you would get this star witness. First of all, you provide him with protection, and then you would begin to make contacts with your local FBI office. Try to make a couple contacts there with anyone you can trust, and Berkman probably knows a couple people there in the DC FBI. I would not be surprised. I'm sure he probably does. Someone you can trust, and you arrange a meeting somewhere, and you have this FBI agent meet with your confidential informant in a hotel or anywhere else, and you let this guy tell this FBI agent that you trust exactly what he knows, and then you get him protection, and you work from there. The idea that you would not go to the authorities. I mean, you've got the guy that says he can finger the 2 guys who killed Seth Rich, and your response is, "Okay, well, why don't you come to my press conference and my event?" Did he ever consider it? You might want to go to the FBI. You might want to go to the state police. You might want to go to somebody. I wouldn't, I don't know if I'd go to the DC Metro Police. I don't know how much help you'd get there. But you got to go to somebody in law enforcement with your star witness, and he's got to tell them what he knows so that they can go pick these 2 guys up and question them. If this guy comes out publicly and makes the statement, these 2 guys already now know about it. He's basically identified them. He said they're former ATF and DEA agents. Now, they've got internet connection, I'm sure. They probably know about this. And by now, they're probably on their way to Mexico. So, if they're the guilty parties, they would know that. Okay? The guilty parties would hear the story and, "Oh, we're about to be outed on Sunday. We better get to the border." Fortunately, we got plenty of time because they told us on Monday. So, I just don't see how you would have someone that has this kind of bombshell information, and not only do you not keep them quiet and protect them and try to arrange a meeting with someone in the FBI who you can trust, who you could start working the problem out with. No. You don't even do that. Instead you invite them to a public speech to proclaim this information publicly before ever going to law enforcement. And Jack Berkman is a lawyer. It doesn't seem like the legal advice you would get from a lawyer if you came up to a lawyer and said, "Yeah, I know somebody who told me they can finger the killer of so-and-so." I mean, your lawyer's probably going to say, "Hey, well, then why don't you go do a public announcement about it in about 4 or 5 days? But first, let's go ahead and publish it in the newspaper and let everybody know that you have a source that can identify 2 killers. And then let's have him go do a public speech. And hey, let's not worry about going to the cops. They'll figure it out." There's something bad wrong with this whole story, my friends. But I guess, take it for what it's worth. This is what Jack Berkman is saying. He's saying he's got a witness who was discovered by this NYPD retired police officer, Mr. Whalen, who found this witness, and this witness is prepared to identify the 2 killers of Seth Rich, which apparently are a DEA agent and an ATF agent. So, this Sunday, I guess we'll all find out, huh? My. Well, it looks like Rudy Giuliani is going on offense. Good. Looks like Giuliani is going to go file a discovery with the court with Uncle Bob the Executioner's team. And he is wanting their phone conversations. He's wanting access to their phones and probably their texts and their emails as well. For whatever reason, Giuliani suspects that they might be saying terrible things about Trump. So he wants to get the communications of Mr. Weissman and the other members of the Hillary donor posse to see what kind of things that they are talking about, and whether or not the court will grant him this. That is a toughie. That is a toughie. Maybe before it all started, yeah. But once you're way into an investigation, maybe, I don't know, probably will come down to who the judge is. But anyway, Giuliani is going to seek discovery on the communications of Uncle Bob the Executioner's Hillary donor posse's communications, which I assume would be text, email, and phone. It's good offense. Maybe a little late, but we'll see how it goes. If I had a mute button, I would use it. I know listening to people down water is probably not a lot of fun, but hey, needed a drink. Well, this week, of course, is going to be a big week on Capitol Hill. A lot going on. Obviously, Trump nominating a judge is going to start a whole shebang up there over that. But keep in mind, we are going to have Lisa Page. Lisa Page will be testifying in a closed session. I believe that's on Thursday. At the same time, her boyfriend, Peter's been stroking us, or I guess her ex-boyfriend, Peter's been stroking us, is going to be in open hearings. That should be fun. I don't expect he's going to say much. I think he's going to plead the fifth as much as possible, say as little as possible. But he's going to get abused. I can assure you of that. So what will happen, Strzok will give his open testimony this week. And then a week or two later, you'll probably have Lisa Page called in to do an open session with the Congress. And she's probably a dangerous character, probably makes a lot of people nervous. Remember, she... essentially, McCabe and Peter's been stroking us tried to throw her under the bus. They tried to throw her under the bus. She has no love for either of those two these days, and she's certainly not going to put herself at risk to protect either of them. And she could say things that contradict both Peter's been stroking us and Lisa Page and Comey and others. She's a dangerous witness. She's one of the most dangerous witnesses that I can think of. And the other most dangerous witness will soon be testifying to the oversight and judicial committees, and that would be Sidney Blumenthal. Why is that? Sidney Blumenthal is Hillary Clinton's closest confidant. Everything that Blumenthal knows, everything Hillary knows. That's her go-to guy. That's her peep. That's her number one guy. And you're going to have Hillary's number one guy, and he was part of passing the dossier along to Mr. Weiner, who passed it to Mr. Steele, the dossier that came from Cody Shearer, one of the Clintons' hatchet men. You know, Sidney Blumenthal, my guess is he'll try to get out of that, but I don't think he's going to be able to. He's going to get subpoenaed, but he will be a very, very interesting witness, and we'll definitely be watching for that. Believe me, that will be very interesting. He probably won't say a thing. Probably plead the fifth. Here's a good question. It's a rhetorical question, but it's a good rhetorical question. Is the FBI and DOJ creating fake documents to cover up their crimes? That's funny, because just yesterday I told you that we finally now have proof of what we've suspected for a very, very long time, which is that this entire investigation into Trump-Russia was a hoax, and that what they're trying to do now is to try to generate the evidence that they need to justify all the illegal surveillance and activities, such as placing informants into the Trump campaign, to justify all those things. They went ahead and did all those things first. Surveillance, spies in the campaign, the investigations. They did all this stuff thinking Hillary would win and it wouldn't matter. But then when they realized that she was probably going to lose, or likely could lose, then they got nervous, and then they had to start creating. They had to now find the evidence to justify all the things they had been doing, which were illegal. The same is true here. It looks like they are now trying to create fake documents to cover up for the illegal things that they did. And there's now some evidence to that. So let's go back to about a week and a half ago, when Matt Gaetz was questioning Rod Rodenstein. And he asked Rodenstein if, in fact, he had read the FISA warrant. This would be the one on Carter Page. Matt Gaetz asked Rodenstein, did you read that FISA warrant that you signed off on? And Rodenstein said, we sat down with a team of attorneys from the Department of Justice, all of whom review that and provide us a briefing. For us, for what is in it. I've reviewed that one in some detail, and I can tell you the information about that does not match with my understanding of the one I signed. But I think it's appropriate to let the IG, that's Huckleberry Horowitz, complete his investigation. Rod Rodenstein asked, did you read the FISA warrant that you signed? And he says, well, we sat down with a team of attorneys from the DOJ, all of whom review that and provide us with a briefing for what's in it. I've reviewed that one in some detail, and I can tell you that the information about that does not match with my understanding of the one I signed. Rodenstein basically told Matt Gaetz that, well, I didn't read the entire application, the whole 9 yards. We have a team of lawyers who do that from the DOJ, and they did that. They read it all in detail, and then they briefed me in that briefing. But then I went back to look at this warrant in detail, and I can tell you that what I saw doesn't match the understanding, doesn't match the one I signed. Rodenstein is telling Matt Gaetz that, well, you know, I did go back and look at that, and it appears to me that what I signed, if I remember correctly, what I signed is not the same as what I just reviewed. What's he telling us? What is there? Was there 2 different versions of the Carter Page FISA warrant application? 2 different versions of the application? Because there's not supposed to be 2 different versions of the FISA warrant application. There's only supposed to be 1. But there's 2, according to Rodenstein, or else it's been modified. That's what he's saying. He's saying, yeah, I went back and looked at it, and, you know, after looking at it, it sure doesn't look like the one that I signed off on. Rodenstein. That's Rodenstein telling Matt Gaetz that, yeah, well, the one I signed off on, you know, doesn't look like what I was briefed on. So it appears that we have 2 different FISAs. One that was presented to the FISA court and signed by Rodenstein, and one that Congress alone was allowed to see. And that would be the one that Rodenstein looked at before he gave the Congress the okay to come and look at it. He didn't give it to him. It was in a skiff. He said, okay, well, let me look at it. We'll look at it, and then we'll let you come over and see it. You can't have it, but you can come and look at it. So that's when Rodenstein took a look at it. And then he's saying that after he took a look at that, he's like, well, yeah, I'm looking at this now, so I can check it out to make sure it's okay for the Congress to come look. But I don't think this is the same one I signed. It is the FISA on Carter Page, but it certainly doesn't look, I don't recall it being like the one I signed. That's a problem. That is a big, fat problem. Now, maybe that's why they will not give it to Nunes. And Nunes was just on Judge Janine, and he told her, he said, yeah, we need for the President Trump, to declassify it so that we can actually get it and look at this application and see it. Because we think it's fraudulent. I'm telling you, man, there's a lot of things going on, that shouldn't have gone on, that are going on, continue to go on. A lot of people are going to jail. Well, Nancy Pelosi, Madam Botox, says that she will avenge Obama by doing whatever it takes to obstruct Trump. And that includes preemptively opposing his SCOTUS pick. She's going to preemptively... Big surprise. Was anyone surprised that Nazi Pelosi, Madam Botox, is going to preemptively be opposed to Trump's SCOTUS pick? Yeah, big surprise. You know, she ought to get busy. Isn't that her district where they got 16,000 piles of human feces on the streets? I believe it is. Maybe she should focus on that instead of obstructing from daylight till dark. And what was this all about for Nancy Pelosi? What was this all about? For a fundraising letter. She's trying to raise money. Just targeted to her base to raise money. That's all it's about. Raising money, raising money, raising money. That's all she does. Raise money, raise money, raise money, raise money. That's all they do. And they'll say anything and do anything to do it. And this proves it. Right here. There you go. San Francisco, you deserve her. Well, as I just said, Devin Nunes says that the FISA warrant for Carter Page is fraudulent. He's not saying I think it is. He's not saying I believe it is. He's not saying we suspect it is. He looked and told Judge Jeanine directly to her face, the FISA warrant for Carter Page is fraudulent. Yep. Of course, we had Steve Bannon, who was recently verbally harassed in a bookstore. The owner called the police. We had Stephen Miller recently went into a local bar where he goes all the time to have beer, and somebody in there recognized him as being Trump's, PR spokesman or whatever, and started in on him. He had to leave the bar. The bartender, told him to leave or something. You had Kellyanne Conway, who got accosted in a grocery store in the canned food section because she serves in the Trump team. So, yeah, you got people coming out of the woodwork thanks to Mad Maxine Waters, who's escalated this situation to a place where it really should not be. And they just need to start arresting these people. That's what they need to do. Of course, on the other side of the coin, we have Kelsey Grammer, who calls out the lonely lefties on abortion and, of course, on the Second Amendment. Kelsey Grammer and his wife are both big-time Second Amendment and pro-life supporters. Big time. A lot of people don't know Kelsey Grammer is a pretty hardcore conservative, and he did a pretty good job. He played George Washington in a movie. I can't remember which one it was, but he did a pretty good job in that flick. Jeff Daniels also played Washington in a movie called The Crossing. Unfortunately, Jeff Daniels is nuts. But Kelsey Grammer is not nuts, and he's a very strong conservative on various issues. And I don't think he lives in Hollywood either. Of course, we have Michael Goodwin, who is the latest to say that the Right Reverend Clinton is running in 2020. Now everybody's coming out and saying she's running in 2020. I was saying that a year ago. I knew she had no intention. I go, well, look at her a year ago and see what she was doing. What is she doing? Well, she's doing what people do who are getting ready to run for president. That's what she's doing. So I knew it a year ago. But I'm glad to see everyone else is now jumping on board, finally figuring out that the Right Reverend Clinton has every intention of running again in 2020. A lot of these people believe she will succeed. Now, that's where I part with them. I don't think she will succeed. She might even throw her hat into the ring. I think the Democratic Party doesn't want her in the game. That's what I think. I think she could have health issues. I think she has a 50-50 shot or better of being in jail by 2020. It's very possible. Very possible. So anyway, Michael Goodwin. Now, Michael Goodwin's kind of a funny case, he was a really smart guy, and I think like an Ivy League type guy, and he got his first really good gig as a writer, as a speech writer for Lyndon Johnson, and he was writing a lot of Lyndon Johnson stuff. But of course, and he was pretty much a liberal, anti-war. But once LBJ got us into the Vietnam War, and they continued to escalate the Vietnam War, finally Michael Goodwin couldn't take it anymore, and he finally went into LBJ and said, I've decided to accept a fellowship to somewhere else, and so I'm going to be leaving my job. Of course, LBJ had come to depend on Goodwin, but a lot of people were leaving LBJ at the time because he was increasing the troops in Vietnam. The war wasn't going well, and they just did not want to be associated with him anymore, so they started leaving. Well, it really ticked him off when Goodwin wanted to leave, so he told Goodwin, when Goodwin tried to resign, he said, well, I'm not going to let you resign. You're too important, I need you, I'm not going to let you resign. And he said, well, I have to. I've already accepted the job. Lyndon's like, hey, I'll call him and cancel. What's the number? He wouldn't take no for an answer. So finally Goodwin said, look, Mr. President, I'm very sorry, but I'm leaving. I'm leaving. I'm taking the job. And LBJ threatened to send him to Vietnam and make him a private in the infantry, in the Marine Corps, and put him right on the front lines. Well, of course, the dumbass of the week this week, usually do it on a Monday, but I was just trying to get through the John Solomon stuff yesterday, and it took the entire video, and even then I didn't really get to spend the time I wanted. I'll be going back and revisiting some things on that as well in the days to come, because there's so much to unpack out of that. But anyway, I had a special request from someone last week that I've been overlooking someone who he feels is easily should get a nomination for Dumbass of the Week, and he feels I've maybe overlooked him. I really haven't. I mean, I've known he's done a lot of Dumbass of the Week things. It's just the competition is so stiff every week. But, you know, and of course he's a Canadian in this case, so I typically go for U.S. people. But, you know, it's okay. We can do a Canadian or a Brit. It's all right, or an Australian or whatever. So anyway, he's earned it. He's been involved in a lot of dumbass things. So sort of an honorable mention, I guess, this week for Dumbass of the Week. We're going to go ahead and give that to Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau, the PM of Canada, who has a zero tolerance policy on sexual misbehavior. Unfortunately, he's caught up in a big scandal where he's been accused of groping a reporter 18 years ago or something. So at a beer fest or something. So now he's trying to shake off this. His poll numbers, I think, are down. I think he's down in the low 30s now. So, you know, his honeymoon was over a long time ago. He's kind of on the wrong side of this trade deal with Trump. So things are not looking so good for the girly man, Justin Trudeau. Low approval ratings. His zero tolerance policy now is coming into question because he's now being accused by this reporter of groping her 18 years ago. So anyway, we'll go ahead and give that to Justin Trudeau of Canada. He's our dumbass of the week. And I don't know if my subscriber is from Canada, but hopefully this makes you happy. And, you know, and he deserves it. You know, he really does. He is a dumbass. He could be the dumbass any week. It's just, he's been in the running before. It's just that the competition's stiff, and I usually focus on U.S. Politicians and people like that. U.S. people, actors, politicians, whatever. But yeah, Justin Trudeau, he is a dumbass. Let's go ahead and make Justin Trudeau our dumbass of the week. Now, let's get back just briefly. I have a little over 5 minutes left. So I want to touch on something from yesterday. Kind of ties in today, ties into everything. What we just talked about, are they falsifying documents? Are they illegally? And keep in mind, if Rodenstein is found to be redacting information that the Congress is requesting, and he's redacting something that would show, that would be evidence of a crime, that's a criminal act by Rod Rodenstein. The acting attorney general is not allowed to cover up or hide evidence of a crime through redacting, making false documents, making documents unavailable that he knows show crimes. That's a crime. Let's keep that in mind. So, we learned a lot of important things from the John Solomon article, and we'll be going back and revisiting some of those specific things. I still have to get that stuff caught up on my timeline as well, which I'll do tonight. But one of the things I guess that stood out to me, and I think to a lot of you, was that we learned that there wasn't just one investigation, which shouldn't surprise us. Everybody talks about Operation Crossfire Hurricane. But we learned that there were 4 separate investigations, including one named Dragon. What is a dragon? As you know, when they come up with these names, they usually have a reason. The name usually is somehow connected to what's going on. So I thought about that. What is a dragon? A dragon is a lizard. Where does a lizard live? In the swamp. What does a dragon do? Well, it's a big, nasty lizard that breathes fire and kills anything around it. Because it's so big, mean, and nasty, it can breathe fire. The fire-breathing dragon. So, it's kind of funny. Trump's out campaigning, talking about draining the swamp. So they come up with another operation, which they call Dragon. A dragon will be something that will come up out of the swamp. So this is almost like, okay, well, you want to drain the swamp. Well, here's a dragon from the swamp. Let's see you take down the dragon. That's how I took it. Just a crazy thought that went through my mind that's not real pertinent to this. But what's most important is that we learned that there were 4 separate investigations, not just one. That shouldn't surprise us. But now we know it to be a fact. We know what two names of the investigations were, but we don't know the other two. But we do know from John Solomon that they are referring to, on different occasions, four completely different investigations or operations regarding Russian election interfering, Trump Russia, whatever you want to call it. We also know that Peter's been stroking us referred to there being different groups having informants, plural, informants. He didn't say informant, he said informants, needing to share their derogatory information. So right there in that text, he's saying, okay, remember, this was the day after the election. Trump wins the election. Peter's been stroking us, freaks out, sends Lisa Page a text, and says, okay, we need to scrub everybody, meaning we need to investigate everybody around Trump. And then we need to get together with the team, and we need to get whatever we got, because now Trump's about to become president, and it's going to be hard as hell now, because he's now going to be in transition. It's going to be hard as hell to get what we've been trying to get, which is the evidence to prove the evidence that will justify all the stuff that we've been doing. And we haven't come up with it. So now we're in a real pickle. So we got to scrub everybody. Not only that, but the informants that we've had on these through these various investigations, different investigations, all the informants that each of us have that we're running in our operations or investigations, we need to get together with them and get their derogatory, meaning bad, get the dirt. In other words, get the dirt. We need to get together with this group that's running their operation, and this other group that's running their operation, and this group that's running their operation. The four of us, we need to get together and find out what our informants, what kind of dirt they got, because we need to get it. We need to compile it all together. We need to scrub everybody around. We need to take everything we've got, and we need to sit down and study it and see if we can get a FISA warrant with that. If we need to put more informants in, if we need to plant some evidence, whatever it is that we need to do, we need to do it, because our gooses are cooked. Trump won. Pretty soon he'll be inaugurated, and once that happens, it's going to be tough digs for all of us, unless we can figure out a way to dig up some evidence to justify everything that we've been doing. Absolute bombshell. It's right there. So when he's talking about these other agencies, and of course we know that Devin Nunes, Devin Nunes knows, as he just said, and as I just quoted to you, exactly what he said to Judge Jeanine Pirro, was that the FISA application, it's a fraud. Of course it was. They said it was Papadopoulos and Downer, but we now know from reading the text that it wasn't that at all, really. That was an excuse that they used. It actually came from a story that they created or were the source of, which they gave to the media, which they then used. They put it out in the media. Carter Page responded to it with a letter to Comey saying, hey, why are you people leaking stories saying I'm under investigation for espionage? I'm not involved in espionage with the damn Russians. Are you crazy? You know, taking issue with it. In which case, Peter been stroking us. Oh, that's the reason that we need right there to get the FISA warrant. And that's how they got the FISA warrant. They got the FISA warrant because of the story they leaked and a letter Carter Page wrote about the story they leaked. That's what really happened. Okay. So now Devin Nunes knows this. Let's also keep in mind that we have these 6 agencies. The 6-agency task force, which Peter's been stroking us was a part of. And that included the FBI, NSB, the National Security Branch of the FBI, the CIA, the Treasury, the Department of Justice, National Security Division, the DNI, Director of National Intelligence, that would have been Clapper, and of course the NSA. So within these various groups is probably where you're going to find where the other investigations were coming from. These other 3 investigations, maybe they were other FBI, maybe they're DOJ, maybe don't know what they are, but they're probably going to be found there. And we know all this started long before July of 2016. And let's not forget that John Brennan was on with Chuck Todd, and he basically told Chuck Todd that the FBI was essentially formed by British intelligence about members of the Trump campaign who may be colluding with Russians. And who was the informants there? Those informants would have been Halper, Downer, and Steele. Those guys are connected to intelligence, not FBI. Figure that one out. It's not too hard. Thank you for tuning in. Be back tomorrow. Bye.